There's a moment in any high-stakes competition when one side stops reacting and starts controlling. When the moves being made stop being defensive and start being inevitable. That's not a dramatic shift. It's quiet, methodical, and the side that doesn't notice it happening usually doesn't realize it until the outcome is already locked in. That moment on this geopolitical board has already happened. This week, three of America's most credible news organizations, The New York Times, The Washington Post, and Politico, each independently published reports citing multiple officials with knowledge of classified intelligence, all pointing to the same devastating conclusion. Russia has obtained America's complete operational strike plan for Iran. Not a fragment, not an intelligence summary. The actual plan, target coordinates, strike sequencing, launch platform assignments. The entire campaign architecture, how American jets would suppress Iranian air defenses, what the timing windows looked like, and precisely where Iranian systems would be blind when the second wave arrived. And Russia handed every page of it directly to Tehran. To understand why this is different from every other intelligence leak in recent memory, you have to understand what an American strike plan actually is. It isn't just a list of targets. It's a living system, a layered architecture of decisions, timing constraints, asset positioning, and threat assumptions built over months by analysts, pilots, and planners who spend years learning how to sequence an air campaign. The sequencing is the intelligence asset. Knowing that American aircraft will suppress radar installations before the main strike wave doesn't just tell Iran where to expect the first jets. It tells Iranian commanders exactly how to reposition everything that doesn't emit radar, everything that American jamming aircraft can find to intercept those jets during the precise window when the American plan assumes Iranian air defenses are disabled. And Iran has spent the last 8 months building exactly that kind of defense. Satellite imagery from February 10, 2026, analyzed by the Institute for Science and International Security, tells a story that requires no interpretation. At the underground enrichment complex near Natanz, carved into the granite of what analysts call Pickaxe Mountain, fresh concrete is clearly visible at both the western and eastern tunnel entrances. This isn't routine maintenance. These are the same tunnel access points that appear in American targeting coordinates. Iran received the plan, identified the specific approach vectors the GBU-57 bunker buster bombs are programmed to follow, and began pouring concrete into precisely those configurations to defeat them. Iran isn't hiding this work. The satellite imagery is available to anyone with a commercial subscription. The hardening is being done in plain sight. That's a message, a very deliberate one. At the Parchin military complex southeast of Tehran, a facility known as Taligan II has undergone even more dramatic transformation. ISIS President David Albright confirmed this week that Iran has completed a concrete sarcophagus around the site and has begun covering the entire structure with soil. His word for what it will become: unrecognizable. A facility that appears on American targeting maps is being buried until satellites can no longer distinguish it from surrounding terrain. That's not hardening, that's erasure. Iran isn't just reinforcing the targets America planned to hit, it's making them disappear from the imagery that feeds American strike planning software entirely. The intelligence leak is only part of the picture. Because Russia didn't just hand Iran a blueprint for how America planned to attack. Russia simultaneously handed Iran the weapons to defeat that attack's core assumptions. In December 2025, Iran finalized an arms acquisition from Russia that included 500 Verba shoulder-fired Manpad systems with 2,500 infrared homing missiles. These systems were specifically designed for one purpose: to target low-signature aerial assets, drones, cruise missiles, and low-flying aircraft without emitting any radar signal that American jamming platforms can locate or suppress. The timing of this request is critical. Iran formally approached Russia with this specific shopping list just days after the June 2025 Israel-Iran war ended. Days after absorbing direct B-2 stealth bomber strikes on its nuclear facilities. Iran didn't panic. It didn't plead for a ceasefire. It didn't negotiate terms of surrender. Instead, Iranian military planners studied exactly how those strikes were executed, identified the vulnerability the American doctrine depends on radar suppression as the first phase of every air campaign since Desert Storm, and went directly to Moscow for the weapon system that removes that vulnerability entirely. 500 mobile, non-emitting missile units, dispersed across Iran's vast geography, operated by small rotating teams that scatter after every engagement. They cannot be suppressed because there is nothing to find. But Russia didn't stop there. Since at least January of 2026, according to multiple defense analysts monitoring the conflict, Russian engineers have been integrating loaded Verba Manpad units onto Iranian-designed, Russian-produced Shahed drone platforms, attaching both the missile and a targeting camera to the top of the drone. The tactical implication of that modification is something no American war doctrine has previously been built to counter: a drone that can shoot back at the fighter jet trying to intercept it. Every American pilot assigned to a radar suppression mission over Iranian airspace now faces a threat calculus that didn't exist 6 months ago. The drone approaching on radar may not be a reconnaissance asset. It may be a surface-to-air missile platform that has been pre-positioned at precisely the approach angle that the strike plan Russia leaked told Iranian commanders to expect. If you're finding this breakdown valuable, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss our continued coverage as this situation develops, because what comes next on this board matters more than almost anything being discussed right now. Russia provided the plan. Russia provided the weapons to defeat the plan. But China is providing something equally decisive: the real-time battle picture that converts a static leaked document into a continuously updated operational intelligence feed. China's commercial satellite network, operating under the cover of civilian Earth observation contracts, is providing Iranian military commanders with high-resolution imagery of American carrier strike group movements in the Persian Gulf and Red Sea, anti-ship missile targeting data, updated positioning of American naval assets relative to Iranian coastal battery locations. This isn't intelligence sharing in the traditional sense. This is China handing Iran a live dashboard of American force disposition updated in near real time. The strategic architecture being assembled here has a specific shape. And it's important to name what that shape is, because understanding it is the only way to understand why everything Russia and China are doing makes sense as a unified campaign. Russia and China do not want Iran to win this confrontation. That phrasing is not a distinction without a difference. It is the central logic of everything being done. A decisive Iranian victory would be destabilizing in ways that create unpredictable consequences neither Moscow nor Beijing wants. What Russia wants is Ukraine. What China wants is Taiwan. And what both of them need to get what they want is not Iranian victory. It's American strategic exhaustion. A failed American strike on Iran that consumes a significant portion of America's depleted precision munitions stockpile triggers retaliatory missile strikes against 800 American military installations across 80 countries, fractures the coalition of 19 allied nations whose aircraft are also covered by the leaked plan, and produces a financial and political shock that ties Washington's attention to the Persian Gulf for years. That outcome serves Moscow and Beijing far more than a clean Iranian military victory ever could. This is the endgame being constructed, not Iran's triumph, America's depletion. There's a third layer to what Russia is doing that is easy to miss if you focus only on the weapons and the intelligence. Russia is simultaneously constructing a public diplomatic record. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, in an interview broadcast on Al Arabiya satellite television, specifically chosen to reach a global Arabic-speaking audience of hundreds of millions, delivered a formal public warning. Any new American military strike on Iran, Lavrov stated, would carry dangerous consequences. The risks of a nuclear incident, he added, are real. Everyone involved, he said, understands this is playing with fire. That statement is not a caution. It is a time-stamped entry in the historical record. Russia is creating the public narrative infrastructure that positions Moscow as the party that warned the world, that tried to prevent the conflict, and that bears no responsibility for whatever follows the next American strike. It is framing, deliberate, precise, designed to matter when the conflict expands beyond the Persian Gulf, when international bodies convene, when history is written. China's satellite images are archived and time-stamped. Russia's public warnings are on the record. Iran's tunnel hardening is visible on commercial imagery. Every actor in this configuration is documenting their position, not for the moment, but for the accounting that follows. And then there's the American position on this board. CNN reported this week, citing sources with direct knowledge, that the White House has been briefed that American military forces could be ready to execute a strike operation by the weekend. 2 carrier strike groups are positioned in the region. Air and naval assets have been building up for days. The timeline, according to multiple officials, is now measured in days rather than weeks. But American military commanders have simultaneously been warning political leadership privately that the operational assumptions underlying the strike plan are no longer valid. The targets have been hardened or buried. The defensive architecture has been built around the plan's sequencing. The element of surprise, which is not a luxury in these operations, it is a structural requirement, is gone. This is the specific trap that Russia and China constructed. Not to prevent an American strike, to ensure that if the strike happens, it fails to achieve its objectives while consuming resources America cannot replace on a timeline that matters. The American missile stockpile, a figure that has been the subject of repeated classified briefings to congressional leaders, can sustain somewhere between 7 and 10 days of high-intensity combat operations. That number, reported by the Wall Street Journal, has been read by every allied government in the region. It has been read by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, Japan, South Korea, and Australia. It has been processed by each of those governments as what it actually is. A ceiling on how long American military power in the region can be sustained before it runs out. Subscribe right now if you want to follow this story as it develops. There are critical updates coming that you will not want to miss. Qatar has already delivered its answer. Doha informed Washington that Al Udeid Air Base, America's largest military installation in the Middle East, cannot be used for offensive strike operations against Iran. That decision, made by a country that hosts 10,000 American military personnel on its soil, is not a diplomatic inconvenience. It is a structural subtraction from the American order of battle. And the question rippling through every other allied capital is the same one Qatar already answered. At what point does the cost of hosting American forces exceed the value of the security guarantee those forces are supposed to provide? This is the question that Russia has been engineering for years. Not whether America can win a military confrontation with Iran. Whether America's allies believe America can protect them after the confrontation is over. America operates military facilities in 80 countries. 800 installations hosting hundreds of thousands of personnel. Every one of those facilities is a potential target in Iranian retaliation doctrine, which is designed not to match American military power, but to impose costs on American allies that make continued American basing politically unsustainable in their domestic politics. The scenario that American planners most fear is not a carrier being hit by an Iranian missile. It's a Qatari or a Bahraini or Japanese government watching footage of a failed American strike absorbing retaliatory missile barrages against American-adjacent facilities on their territory, reviewing the Wall Street Journal's reporting about America's 7 to 10-day combat window and performing the calculation that Qatar already performed. The calculation that concludes the target painted on your country by hosting American forces is no longer worth what those forces provide. Russia wants that calculation to end in American geopolitical isolation. China wants it to end in American military withdrawal from the Pacific. And Iran wants it to produce enough political cost that no American president attempts to strike Iranian nuclear infrastructure again for a generation. All three of them have spent the past 18 months placing pieces precisely to make those outcomes more likely with every passing hour. Here is the reality of where this stands. Iran's tunnels are deeper than they were 6 months ago. Its missile stocks have been replenished. Its air defenses have been rebuilt around the specific assumptions of the strike plan Russia provided. The targets that American planners identified in the plan that was leaked are being buried until satellites cannot find them. The carrier strike groups positioned to execute the operation are inside the engagement envelope of hypersonic missiles with 4-minute flight times, and America's interceptor inventory, after 2 years of operations, cannot guarantee their protection. And somewhere between the weekend and the weeks ahead, a decision will be made in Washington that will define the trajectory of American power for the next decade. The board has been set. The pieces have been moved, and the side that has been watching the wrong squares is now facing a position that the other side calculated years before this moment arrived. Share this video right now because what is happening in the Persian Gulf is not a regional conflict. It is the opening of the most consequential strategic competition of the 21st century, and the decisions made in the next few days will determine who is positioned to win it.